Welcome to the first episode of Monsters of Design.
Welcome.
Welcome. It's a podcast that our friend, my friend, John Sontag came to me with. John, do you want to tell everybody a little bit about
Well, the person you were just listening to, that's Brian Miller over there. And we decided to do a podcast because it's a pandemic and we're stuck at home. All we do is talk to each other.
So we did it.
We apparently think we're special. Kidding.
Yeah.
But we do know a lot of special people in the design, film, artistic, creative community, and we like learning and we like listening. So we want to have a lot of those people on so we can listen and learn. And the goal is to essentially identify some of those quote-unquote monsters in this industry and how they keep us from doing our best work. So we're going to talk to these people and find out how we can take them down and love them and become friends with them.
Yep.
And show them a better way.
And for our first episode, we have a Bay Area commercial/corporate director by the name of Cheryl Isaacson. She runs an outfit called Lincoln Street Studios. Mm-hmm. They do a lot of work, not just in California, but other parts of the country as well. And so, we brought Cheryl on. I do a fair amount of work with her. We brought her on to sort of unpack our first monster, which was scope creep.
Scope creep.
You know, we talk with Cheryl about her relationship to scope creep. John and I chime in a little bit with our experience. And then we go into also a larger conversation around specificity in filmmaking and specificity's relationship to quote unquote, diversity in filmmaking, especially in commercial and corporate spaces. And then at the end, we talk a little bit about comic books and nerd stuff, but the main focus is definitely on scope creep. We're learning as we go, people.
Well, should we do it? Should we start? Should we start the episode?
Let's start the episode.
All right, here we go.
Fucking chaotic.
I think the way this just timed, the first thing you're gonna hear on this recording is fucking chaotic.
Yeah,
I saw it. It went 3, 2, 1, and then Brian finished his sentence with
because they threw me into a unstable portal. Anyway, Cheryl, thank you so much.
I'm checking the tracks real quick.
Oh, good. I just reset mine,
wait for me.
Maybe that'll help.
Oh my Lanta. This is not going to be the introduction. So should we stop this and then do another one? No.
Yeah, just keep it going.
Just keep it going? Oh my God. Okay, should we let's just
we'll do it live.
Just whatever. Okay, cool.
So John, do you want to introduce us? What are we doing here?
So, this is the very first Monsters of Design podcast. And Brian and I decided to do this podcast. I convinced Brian to help me do this podcast.
You threw me in the back of a trunk, drove me up to a mountaintop, and threatened my life if I didn't do it.
It worked.
And it worked. It was very effective.
Paid off.
Today, our first guest is a Bay Area director, a corporate commercial director, the woman, the legend.
Oh, I've already
Cheryl
snorted.
Isaacson.
Oh, damn.
Filmmaker. I mean, you can't leave that out.
Filmmaker extraordinaire.
Made some amazing films. And fun fact, helped me get started. She's the reason why I quit my job a long time ago.
Oh, dear.
And started freelancing. And I'm so excited that you're the first guest.
Yeah, she helped get me my start too. Because of you, I am in the film world.
Yeah, I have a way of dragging people in. I don't throw them in trunks.
You do.
That's not my MO.
I was gonna say you didn't. You dragged me behind the car. I wasn't in the trunk.
Fair.
But you're like, God damn it, Brian, we're going on a tech scout, and I was like, what? What's a tech scout?
She just offers us really good coffee. That's how.
Yeah, she's
I remember that.
Caffeine.
I remember really good coffee. some pour overs in your studio. I'm pretty sure that you had
Yep.
something like that going
No,
on.
for sure. Oh man. You guys
So,
had me at
yeah,
Mod
but
Pod. I don't know why I'm calling it that, but that's happening.
I love it. You coined that. That's from
Yeah.
you.
Well, I was
You had
abbreviating
us
it
at
and then I
Mod
was like,
Pod.
wait, it's
Hope that catches on with the kids.
all the cool kids are doing it.
they will.
No, this is super fun. Thanks for having me on, you guys. I I feel like you both have been like a part of my circle in at different times, and I feel like this hasn't been a conversation that we've had, like getting the three of us in a room together. But I do love the approach of us all as designers. I actually got my start as like a more classical print designer, graphic designer, and then art direction and all of that, and it was kind of my like designer's approach to the world that sort of informed how I got into filmmaking too. And yeah, it's been a fun journey in those two worlds of kind of design and filmmaking and how they intersect.
And yeah, as a filmmaker, how is some of that design thinking showing up?
You know, it's funny. It's so organic. I kind of don't even like think about it. I think what might be helpful, Jon, is out the gate. What are you defining as design thinking? Just give us a
Yeah,
framework for that, just so I have
totally.
some rails.
I mean, I think all three of us can even attest to like the many phrases that are out there, including design thinking, tend to become so blurry. Like we just did, we're working on some stuff at YML, the agency I'm working for, and even a word like content can become blurry. Like it means everything, so it means nothing. Design thinking, it means everything, so it means nothing. So I think what I've always gravitated towards, and I think maybe a better way of saying design thinking is just problem solving, and that like really, around the time where I did quit my first job to fully do freelance, was when I was reading Mike Montero's Design as a Job book. And I've probably talked to you about that so much, Cheryl, because I was obsessed with it. But it was great because it really made me see design as more of a blue collar job than it was like this elite job. And I say that loosely because I have so much respect for people that are breaking their back to pull in a day's wage. It's not easy, and we're sitting at our desks, but we need to have that same mentality. We need to roll up our sleeves. We need to do the work, and we need to solve problems and not just try to make things look pretty. And I think that to me, that's design thinking. What are we trying to do? What are we trying to accomplish? What are we trying to solve? Are we doing it right? Are we looking out for people while we're doing it? And I think that comes across through design and filmmaking. And so I think that's the design thinking that stretches across all of these industries.
Yeah, I really resonate with what you're talking about as far as the kind of like roll your sleeves up, blue collar quality of it. I got into graphic design right at the cusp of the digital era, so I spent my internship was at a drafting table. Extremely tactile work. And really it was drilled into me by my mentors that like this is a trade. You're an artist who is in a trade. And really that work ethic. And I've found as I have transitioned from, for years I was a full-time designer, but as I have transitioned into filmmaking, commercial and narrative, that has done me well because there's a very tactile quality to what we do, and it's physically moving things and people, in space. And the other prong of my career is I was an installation artist, and just this idea of creating physical environments was like lifting my design work off the screen and off the drafting table and into reality. And yeah, I love that quality of the work that we do. There's it's tactile. It's like everything you touch had to be designed.
Totally. Yeah. It all ladders up to that ultimate goal, and every little thing can push you more towards that narrative, I think, that you're trying to tell. And that's the other phrase that we all like to say, storytelling.
Storytelling.
It's all blurry these days. Yeah. But I think it's that narrative, you know. I think there's how do we solve the problem through a narrative? And what medium are we using to solve it and tell that narrative? So speaking of that, when clients hire us to do that narrative, sometimes the scope can creep.
It can grow. It's like one of those. Was it the sea monkeys that grow?
Oh gosh.
Did sea monkeys grow? Am I inventing that? Do you know what I'm
No,
talking
there was
about?
Aren't they
totally
the
sea
tiny
monkeys.
little?
And was there
They're
growth?
like invisible though, right?
Do they start invisible?
They were basically just
I don't
compressed
really know.
sponges.
Can you see them?
And then they like
just,
get big, right?
yeah.
Okay, there we go.
Oh, that's
So,
what you're talking about. They're like things
cue
you put water
metaphor.
on. Those aren't sea monkeys. Those are just
Well, they used to have ones called sea monkeys, and
growing
they were really
sponges.
just
They
like
would
a
have one-
compressed
Oh,
like sponge thing.
Yeah.
those were
and
fun
then-
though. Yeah,
If you send in enough box
what were
tops,
those?
you can get
Yeah.
a sea monkey.
exactly.
Hold on,
Exactly.
guys. Let me Google this.
Oh, no.
No, I'm kidding. But I think of scope creep as a sea monkey. You know, it's just this little thing in your fish tank, and you're like, I can hang with this. This is a cute little guy. I can do this. And then, you know, the sea monkey fucking grows. And you're like,
Turns
oh,
into a monster.
oh shit, yeah. And then it breaks out of the tank. So now you have like a really hungry sea monkey. It's broken out of its tank. It's out of control. And like Jon said, it's a monster.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with our first episode, we have to slay that monster.
We're going to fucking kill it.
That's the last time I think I'm going to say that phrase because I feel like it's going to get really cheesy.
Yeah. Well, and
I keep saying
so I
that.
have a challenge on that. I don't know that all monsters need to be slayed. I'm interested
There
in
you go.
taming the
Perfect.
monster.
Hmm.
So,
Couldn't agree more.
yeah.
Yeah, same.
And we talked about this. Well, and I think that's what's perfect is like
Yeah.
there's this idea like we do start with the concept of these things are monsters to us in these fields in this industry, and we talked about this a little bit before the podcast where you know whether we're taming them or we're taking responsibility for letting these things become monsters. How do we do that? And there's so many different things we could tackle, so many different monsters we could go after. But you know, for this one, scope creep, like Cheryl, I'm curious, like how can you elaborate on that? Like how would you tame this monster per se?
Yeah, I mean, just in thinking about this, it was a funny thing because I was like, oh, I don't have I initially thought, oh, I don't have a lot of thoughts about this. Like this was a more early in the career problem for me. It was a huge problem actually. But then as the more I thought about it, I was like, no, actually this is a thing. And I feel like early in my career, scope creep was, and I think of it as creepy. This is a creepy monster to me. It like it kind of sneaks up on you. But I feel like in some ways there was an environment, especially when you're young in your career. There's this environment that sort of feeds the monster, but then it also it feeds off your own sort of insecurities, your own desire to please people, to be seen as a
Yup.
Preach.
problem solver. And
Yep.
some of this is layered with like gender too. As a young woman in a very like male dominated field, initially it was really hard for me to not say yes when I shouldn't say yes, and to put boundaries in place. And to understand my own work enough to know how to frame it in such a way that this creep wouldn't set in. And so the more I think about it, like if you had talked to me 20 years ago, this client or this conversation would have been about clients. It would have been about the people that we are, ultimately in our trade accountable to, and the people that we're working with. And I kind of would have put the onus on them. Mm-hmm. But I've come to realize that, man, that I was feeding that monster early on,
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
Yeah.
I still feed it. I still give him little snacks from my hand. I'm like, hey, bud.
Fine,
Yes,
you
I'll
can
say
grow.
yes. Of course I can do that, hand that in end of day today. Yes. He's like, mine, yes.
Well, it's eagerness and it's ego.
Urgent deadlines, yes.
It's ego
yes.
too. It's like we want to be seen
Yeah,
as like we want to be seen as the one with the solution. And
totally.
and I kind of feel like, I just keep coming back to this idea, John, because you always bring things around to design thinking. This is where it can lead us astray. Because if our ego tells us that we need to be the one to solve, XYZ problem, whether it's in scope or not, then we're going to get creeped. And it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable as a lifestyle, for sure, to hang out with that monster.
Yeah, and I feel like that whole like ego part and wanting to be the problem solver is like missing the mark. And I think our job is not to be the problem solver, but to be the person that helps find the solution. It doesn't have to come from us. If anything, like some of the best designers know, like they're not the one birthing that solution. They're just good at finding it. And a lot of times the clients are the ones that have the solution. You just have to help pull it out of them
Yeah.
and then let it shine,
Yeah. But that's hard to let go of when you're,
Yeah.
fresh out of college and you're bursting at the seams with ideas. Finding a way to like be grounded in that way. I know one thing I always say to myself is you're not your work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. That's a whole.
And this is one of those careers that's really hard to work against that because a lot of us are
defined by our portfolio.
Super sensitive people who like our work to look pretty and make people happy.
Well, and just we self-identify with that work, right?
Tricky one.
And that's where the ego comes in. It's like they ask you to do, I'm thinking specifically of like graphic design, like ID work, asking you to do iterations that are out of scope or reiterate something that's already been gated. And your own sense that my name is attached to this. I want, fill in the blank, whatever, but this is my work. And that you're somehow, your life force is imbued in that in some way, I think can lead to, it can lead to an acceptance of a kind of project creep that doesn't benefit, anyone.
What are some of the things that have helped you tame the monster by being proactive and engaging with it and sort of taking that responsibility upon yourself? You start to see that the client may need more. You might think, oh, they only agreed to do this. Now I have to. We don't realize that that's a potential opportunity to just make more money, or to just ask for help. If you're in-house, you're not really, making more money unless you see it as an opportunity to progress in your career and get a raise or promotion. But how can we do that? What are those practical ways that we can engage with it in a productive way to see it actually grow in a positive direction?
Yeah, I think, as I was thinking about this, I kept coming back to this internal and external. So the internal things that are feeding the monster, getting in our way, are those insecurities, is that ego. But then there are external things that feed it too. And some things that you can't control. There's clients who allow, like, especially if it's like a marketing department you're working with. By the way, just in interest of clarity, I've been a freelancer my whole career, and I currently own a production company, and also direct as a freelance commercial director for agencies as well. Whereas John's been, I mean, you could speak for yourself, but you've been in and out of freelance. And Bryan, you're primarily freelance. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a freelance boy.
So that's kind of just to
Official
help you to
title.
like frame.
Yeah.
But what I find is that there's the ego of the client too. Like sometimes the client self-identifies with the creative and they're using it as a vehicle for their self-expression. Really important to identify that early.
How do you even like sniff some of that out?
Oh, how do you sniff that out? Experience. I mean, sometimes the answer is just experience.
Do you think there's a sense of like trying to relate on some level? Like, say you have like, you're working with a CMO and they're new and they are trying to push forward a brand refresh, and the designs and the videos and the photos and whatever they're producing, they're so in love with their idea that it's hard for them to step outside of that and realize they could actually expand what they're doing without going outside of this brand that they've recently identified, but they're so in love with their idea. Like, I feel like maybe there's situations like that where you're like, there's some major ego going on, but I totally get it because I've had that for sure, where I've been so in love with my idea. So maybe there's a way to like figure out how to walk alongside that person and what are the things that maybe have helped us, figure that out along the way so that, things don't balloon out of control.
Yeah, I think in that instance, you said something really key, and it's the alongside. My goal with every client is you begin the relationship in a negotiation, right? You begin with the part that all of us as artists hate. What's this going to cost? What's our contract? And in that moment, you're sitting on either side of the table and you're negotiating back and forth. But then once that contract is signed, and sometimes even in the process of that, my goal is to have us be sitting on the same side of the table. And we're no longer in opposition. Don't meet ego with ego.
Yeah.
But a lot of times inside that client who has that ego is a story. And so I'm looking for that story. And I just thought of one that's so dumb that I think it's actually helpful. So often I will work with a same director of marketing as they move from company to company. It's really common for people to change jobs and they want to bring in their external creatives that they like. And so I'll bounce with somebody onto the next. And with this one, this is years ago, thankfully nobody you guys know, but I noticed a pattern that this person, we'll call him Fred because it's funny. Fred loved purple.
Fucking Fred.
And really felt like the whole brand ID of his latest project was just this intense purple palette with like shards of yellow, like really into that complementary contrast. New company comes in, brings him in. He wants to turn everything on its head. And I start seeing that the only things he likes are purple. That literally that's his thing. And it doesn't matter what company. So that you see, there's a story there, right? The success or the regrets of the last experience have become imbued in that color. And his, I love clients dearly. I really do. They're great people, but they're paying us for a reason, and they're not necessarily attuned to they're not necessarily going to be aware that they're doing the purple thing every time. It's just not necessarily going to occur to them. And so getting to the heart of that story in a gentle way was helpful in that instance. And that success can look like, hey, client Fred, you've got great ideas. Like, let's color outside the lines of your last company a little bit. And I'm gonna really let you ideate a lot in the beginning of this process. And that gets to another like taming thing too. And I think, Jon, you and I have talked about this, that idea of the funnel, right? Like, ideate all that stuff out before you get to the point where you need to be reductive in your process.
Right. Totally. And that's where I think the inverse can happen, where if you don't do that at the beginning, you start to spiral, and then it's a different kind of scope creep. It's not that they just want like, more designs, more shots, more edits, more whatever. It's that they want more options. And I think that can show itself all the way through the production process. You know what I mean? Like, along the way, more mood boards, more storyboards, more prototypes, more whatever. But it happens in a way that expands, because that initial, brainstorming, experimentation is not happening up front. It's happening throughout the process in a way that's not beneficial. You can allow for experimentation to happen as long as that initial sort of, let's talk through this and work through it at the beginning phase.
Yeah, I'm always keeping an eye on that funnel. Like, really, one of the conversations I have with clients, whether it's design or film or whatever, is, okay, here at the beginning, during this creative development phase, I want to hear every crazy idea. And I don't want you to gatekeep out people who may throw a wrench in our works. I've noticed in some of our amazing tech clients, there's a sort of issue just with bandwidth, where the sort of mid-level marketing team, don't show it to, so-and-so at the top of the chain until we're really solid. We've really got something that we're about ready to, press out. And invariably a team that's doing that doesn't want people to see the work until it's further developed, at least from my perspective on, corporate video right now. Invariably that person with a lot more power will come in and throw that creep in.
Absolutely.
Because they weren't consulted, they weren't allowed to be at the top of the funnel. I've just become very plain speaking about that. And I'll ask at the beginning of the project, who's the decider? Not who's on paper as the decider, but who's genuinely the decider. And the answer is, invariably somebody who I did not think was the decider. And
Totally.
It's such good information to know. I mean, just in terms of, continuing with the like taming conversation, just knowing that, it's huge.
Yeah.
I feel like just, again, and it turns back to like what is our responsibility? And if our responsibility is to make the best thing we can make, the most effective thing we can make, ultimately that person who's going to have final say is probably going to have some pretty good insight into that. That's most likely why they are where they are. And so getting to know the people, starting with that person, and what they've done, what has worked for them, what they gravitate towards, and just pushing towards that, I think is a good way to avoid a lot of those the surprise stakeholder, at the end that would cause some of that creep.
Yeah.
Surprise stakeholder.
There it is. There it is. That's the name.
One thing that's become a really big deal for me too in taming the creep is I think early on when I was younger, I was nice. And especially women, you know, we're cultured, like we're told to be, we're brought up to be nice. And I've developed this mantra of kindness. I'm super kind, but kind is honest. And
Totally.
and niceness will get you into project creep. Because again, you're protecting your own ego, your own feelings. You're also
I love that.
avoiding things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say good designers don't play nice. We play kind. You know.
Totally. That's great. That's awesome. Super cool because
writing
it
that
doesn't
down.
change the like the empathetic, caring, I think, vibes that you have to bring to the table, but it does correct what's wrong, you know, with a lot of, I think, what we're talking about. I think it'd be kind of cool. I feel like what's awesome about the scope creep one is it's a great first episode because it does like open up a lot of opportunities to address different things. Because I think so many of those other monster, like this is like the head boss, like this is that villain at the end of the video game that you finally get to, and it takes you like 1,000 hours to beat because everything else ladders up to it.
1,000 hours.
It's 1,000. That's the number. Brian and I know video game
Yeah.
nerds.
Yeah. Well, I love, so what you're saying, John, in our scope creep episode, is there a possibility that the scope might be creeping as we want to talk about more things?
Oh my gosh.
So meta. That was
You know,
so
I just, Galaxy
Amazing.
Brain. This is Galaxy Brain shit. Or it's the edible. I'm not sure.
For me, learning to love the monster is about, like, I've kind of put these taming things, and it's taken me years. You know, there was a point at which I feel like our contract got new things added to it with every like monster that attacked us. But these days it feels like our scope is clear going into a project, and the creep is often like an affirmation that we're on the right track. And it's often a thing of, oh, we really like this. Can we leverage this into more? And my answer to that is yes. We'd love to do that. And there's a cost structure in place that makes sense, that really is easy for you to understand how you can get more. And so I've learned that like that creep in terms of it tends to be more in like deliverables or an expansion of creative, but that it can be a sign that the work is resonating and that you're you know syncing with the client and giving them what they want. And so that's the kind of creep I want. That's the monster I want to love. So yeah, that's a little button on it for me.
That's great. Yeah,
Yeah. And
it's the ultimate goal.
yeah, no, it's so funny. I mean, I think, I mean, to be blunt, I'm still acquiring the wisdom and experience both of you have. And right now, I'm kind of at the stage of like thinking of scope creep in terms of a problem. But, you know, hearing you talk about it in that, through that lens, I think that's a very helpful way to think about it. It's like, hey, you're doing great work. We want more.
Yeah.
We'll pay you for it.
I think what's cool about that too is that I feel like because of Cheryl, we now have like the how-to slay a monster, and it's breaking
Cheryl,
it down, taming it, and loving it.
Cheryl, you're going to write a book.
Yeah.
About scope creep.
I started making notes the other day, and I'm like, oh dear, I have way too much to say about this. Y'all are going to have to edit me somehow.
Yeah, it'll just start with 20 pages, a 20-page manifesto, and then it might creep up to 350 pages. I don't know.
I
But
love,
yes,
I
John,
love
to
the
your earlier
fun with
point.
puns we're having. This
I
is
know.
great.
How else am I going to get my serotonin, John? I need to get it from somewhere.
I
Or
hope
just
people
in
realize
my,
that they're not coming here to laugh with us. They're coming here to laugh at us. I hope
especially me.
it's just as good,
Yeah.
but
Yes,
No, I mean we all laugh at Brian all the time, so that's yeah, that's
1,000%.
good.
yep,
I am
yep.
the court jester. Um,
AKA producer.
oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, aren't we one and the same?
Exactly. Exactly.
But yeah, John. So back to
Yeah,
our
yeah.
earlier point.
No, totally. I'm glad that we kind of wrapped it up with that. I think that was super important. But I also think it's really cool, when we have people on like yourself, Cheryl, to kind of hear what else is really like pressing, like what, beyond this sort of idea of what the monster is. Uh, what feels current to you as an issue, something that you're trying to tackle or speak to or preach about really, to your colleagues and people you work with in the industry. I think we're just excited about learning from people like yourself along the way throughout this podcast.
Yeah, I appreciate being asked to think about this because I feel like there's always something that I'm kind of latched onto. I would say that currently, I want to articulate this well because I think, full disclosure, I'm a white woman. So I I want to just acknowledge that I have I have a place of like privilege, lived privilege in the way that I navigate these things. But for me, the thing I'm working against is I think we've all discovered that diversity for diversity's sake, diversity as in, just put the rainbow, a rainbow of people is not representation. And for me, it gets to this idea of specificity. And and I feel like I'm always having this conversation with clients that whose natural instinct is self-preservation. Our clients are in a tough spot. They have a lot of metrics now on the things that we create that directly impact them. And they have a lot of voices telling them how they should be doing things. And sometimes that results in a sort of reducing our stories, scenarios, visuals down to the most palatable, the most sort of generic, in hope of getting to universal. And they're interpreting universal as non-offensive. They're hoping to just
Right.
not get any bad tweets. They're hoping to not get any negative feedback. And
Yeah.
I think one of the things as creatives we need to do is start modeling how to tell stories that are universal and how that requires bravery. And it requires specificity. And I think one of the ways to think about it is a childhood movie you adored. Like I'll say E.T. It probably impacted, just knowing you two are nerds, probably impacted you both pretty emotionally, as little kids.
Yeah.
Now, does your bicycle fly? It does not. Have you ever met an alien? You have not. That story was 100% specific to those characters, and everything about it was absolutely 100% who those characters were in that story. But yet, universally, it just gets us. It gets us in the heart. But if it has that sort of goal of being non-offensive, being kind of palatable, then it's not universal and you don't feel it. And what we're learning is that we, as humans, we need stories and we need to feel things. And so getting in the place with clients in corporate and commercial spaces where they realize that specificity is how you get to universal, I feel like has been my like mantra for the last several years. And what that looks like for me is like, if we're telling a story of, you know, somebody in their home cooking, well, that person, you know, could be in a wheelchair, genuinely an actor who lives their life in a wheelchair. Is what they're doing any less relevant to you and I? It is not. We all cook dinner.
Right.
But the specificity of that story connects us to things outside of ourselves, but also connects us to ourselves. And a lot of our work centers around tech. And so one way that this kind of works itself out in my creative work is just this narrow idea of what a person who uses tech looks like. Like just picture that in your mind for a moment.
Yeah.
Through all of the advertising, you know, it's a San Francisco living, hip, mostly white, but you know, there's a little bit of like color diversity in there, but it's really a monolithic view of a person who uses a smartphone or uses other kinds of tech. And in my work, I'm just pushing against that. It requires that we stop knowing and stop centering our own stories and creating norms that are our own stories. And it requires us to be curious. And it's weird for me. It almost just cycles back to the ego conversation that we had earlier.
Yep, totally. Yeah. It's not up to us to birth that solution.
I mean, so much of it is getting.
We have to go help find it. Like we're not.
Yeah, and get out of the way.
It's not up to us.
Find
get out of the way. Yeah.
Find it. Find somebody, and then get the fuck out of the way. And try to, you know, try to create ways to help them drive it. Without fucking getting your ego, dragging it in the middle of the road like it's a roadkill or something, you know? Totally. Sorry, but I just
that's well put in my mind.
Yeah, and I love, Brian, that you just like tripled the fuck quotient of this pod.
Yeah,
just
it's not PG.
Just making sure.
No,
I mean, that R rating, that's really where you want to live anyway. So,
well, I might show some boob later.
On our...
Oh yeah, we're gonna get.
I have no idea.
Rated X.
So much more cred.
Explicit.
I'm gonna put the explicit content from when I used to buy CDs because I'm old.
Oh.
Days.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember those.
Those were those cool things. Albums.
Those discuses.
Yeah.
What's the plural of discus? Discuses.
I think it's just discs. I think it's just discs.
Is it just discs?
Just throw an S on there.
Discs. It's not complicated.
Discuses.
I think we've reached the Brian is stoned portion of the episode.
Fair.
Yes, we have.
So will that be like the signal when the pod ends when the edible hits? Is that where we're at?
Oh no, the edible hit like
it's the countdown.
Yeah.
30 minutes ago. Definitely.
Oh, awesome.
Oh my goodness.
Love it.
But
it was great.
I'm so glad that you guys are taking these topics on, because I feel like there's a sort of a whole category of podcasts and information that feel a little bit like we've arrived, here's how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And this feels
Yep.
more like we're curious, let's listen, which I really enjoy.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
absolutely.
his Sontag.
Yeah.
Sontag. His last name is Sontag, John Sontag.
Yes,
It
it
was
is.
just a random word I made up.
It's true.
So does the guest get to do a rec at the end? Are we doing that?
Hell yeah.
Yeah, please.
I was just thinking about this idea of specificity, and I happened to watch an episode of and this is like, I'm such a cliched designer at this point, like just Umbrella of Mercy, right? But I was watching Abstract on Netflix, the second season.
Tell us, what is Abstract?
It's a design
Did you say what is
documentary
that? Oh
series.
man, Brian.
I haven't. I told you I'm not a designer,
Lord.
but I am.
Yeah, but you got to check it out.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
You not knowing what that is
Okay.
going to make John's comments blow up. I'm here for it.
Okay, good. I'm here to cause chaos.
But I watched the one on Ruth Carter, whose work I just absolutely adore. But it was so great to see the context for her work. For those of you who aren't familiar, she's a costume designer. Kind of got her start in films working with Spike Lee. But she won an Oscar for what do you call it? Black Panther.
Oh, her.
Nice.
Fuck
Gotcha.
yes.
Okay.
I know who you're talking about.
It's just an amazing
Yeah.
episode, and I find I get so much inspiration from watching or learning about people from other design disciplines, and I just feel like she is the specificity queen. I mean, that's really what costume is. It's finding
Right.
the precise story that is exactly right to help that person embody, that character.
Totally.
So anyway,
So true.
you could put a link.
That's
link in the
awesome.
pod.
I have not seen that episode. I need to go see that.
So good.
Abstract.
The cinematography is
I've-
too.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's like, if you want to make a creative documentary, that's the bar,
Yeah.
in my opinion. That's how you do it.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I do feel like we should, for the very final thing, because it will make Brian and I very happy and it'll be a fun thing to do at the end. What is your favorite superhero? So it's the inverse of the monster.
Shit.
Favorite superhero and why?
You guys are gonna have to go first. I actually, this is catching me off guard. I gotta think about this.
Well, maybe Brian and I kick it off with the most recent comic book we've read.
Oh!
And then our guest can let us know either what the most recent comic is that they read or their favorite comic hero. I think that would be a good little fun outro. How about you, Brian? What are you currently reading? Because I know you and I
What
are
I'm
always currently reading
currently
the comic.
reading. I'm currently reading Jason Aaron's run on Avengers.
Nice.
It's one of the more recent runs, and it resulted. I went off-roading into some Moon Knight, consumed a lot of Moon Knight, which is a funny sentence out of context. Oscar Isaac will be playing him in the Disney Plus series. And I pivoted to this Avengers run because it at some point heavily features Moon Knight. So I am driving to that point.
Nice. That's awesome. I'm
John, how
currently
about you?
reading. I cannot remember the writer and artist, but it's a it's the Dune graphic novel that I think came out recently. It's book one. I can't remember though, but it's really awesome. It's great. The art is amazing. But I'm gonna switch over to my favorite superhero because it's always been Superman, and
He's a
I'm really excited about the new show that's out. I know a lot of people in the comic fandom are very excited about it as well. The cinematography is amazing. And I feel like his story has gotten lost so many times, and so many people have just been like, he's like super strong and like really awesome, and so like
I
let's talk about him that way. But he's
trust
like
me.
why
Yep.
Christopher Reeve is so amazing
Yep.
and represents a lot of the early comics is because he's like so awkward and so sensitive and like a dork and like
A
it's
himbo. A
perfect. He's
gentle
so
himbo.
like gentle and like caring and like no ego, like there's just none. But he still struggles like everybody else. And so I think that's like even though he's like so good on those levels, powers aside, he still struggles. And that's like it's just amazing. And he's always like since I've been like a little kid, I've been drawing like Superman, and that has always stuck with me. And I think because of Christopher Reeve. And so this new Superman and Lois, I feel like the writing is really good and
Oh.
they're capturing that in a really cool way. So that's my favorite.
Yeah. Seriously, shouts to Superman and Lois. If you're not watching it, it's basically Friday Night Lights, but Clark Kent raising his kids with Lois Lane.
Yep,
It's
exactly.
great. Um,
Yeah.
for Cheryl? Do you have an
Well,
answer
I'll
for
give you a
yours?
smart ass answer, and I'll give you one. Ava DuVernay
Do it.
is my favorite superhero.
Oh,
Nice. There you go.
well,
There you
Yeah,
go.
I mean, I was gonna say Batman, but she's
she's
basically
basically
Batman.
she's basically Batman. So that's my snarky answer.
Yes, I fucking
I
love it.
think, and this is going to sound, I feel like I'm falling into a cliche here, but I do like, especially the first iteration of Wonder Woman, Patty Jenkins' Wonder Woman. I'm not a
Yeah.
comic nerd, but I've watched the superhero stuff over the years.
Hmm.
There, there's something about her, like, sort of combination of like ancient and wise and sort of outside the patriarchy that I thought was
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
really
Hmm.
well communicated. And her just sort of seeing through things, sort of seeing through constructs, I find to be really interesting. Yes, Wonder Woman has been problematic, and there's been, weird versions of her out
They
there.
all
So
are. Yeah.
specifically, the first in the trilogy that came out a couple years ago was
Yeah.
kind of my
That's
favorite
awesome.
superhero. And then just consistently, I love Mark Ruffalo's Hulk. I just
Yeah.
Oh,
the
Same.
yeah.
combination of rage
So
and
good.
tenderness that he embodies
Hmm.
in that character, I
Yeah.
I really just, whenever he's on screen, I just love it's so well done.
Hmm.
It taps into my love of Bill Bixby's Hulk when I was a kid, and so yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, for sure. It like I was thinking about that the other day because it was like remind I was watching I forget which one, but one of the Avengers, and it was just reminding me how much it like what it felt like to read those comics as a
Mm.
kid about Hulk
Yes.
and like and watch that show as well. And yeah, totally same page. He's so good. And Wonder
I'm excited
Woman,
to see him in She-Hulk. Yes, Wonder Woman.
Brian, you should lend Cheryl your Dead Earth
Oh, Wonder Woman
comics.
Dead Earth.
Um,
Yes,
Oh my
that's a
God.
great version of Wonder Woman.
So anybody, yeah, John and I read this. Shouts to Wonder Woman Dead Earth.
Hmm.
It's a basically Wonder Woman in a post-apocalyptic DC
oh,
world
interesting.
with like radioactive mutants
Hmm.
and stuff. But
It's great.
but the whole thing is like it's not. It still centers her kindness and her compassion and
Hmm.
her decency in a
Challenges
world.
it big time.
Yeah, really. Oh, it's
Yeah.
great. Um, yeah, I just watched Wonder Woman last night. Uh, I just revisited it, and that Cheryl, I really resonate with that. She has that wisdom to her, and then that like hungry curiosity that makes her seem like not childlike. That's the wrong word, but there's almost an innocence, but she's not.
Yeah, it's the innocence of like, it's almost like the other side, like where Yoda has it, right? It's the innocence of wisdom that appears naive. And I feel like she plays in the same.
That's really well said. Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Interesting.
My
I think
favorite
we checked all the
superhero.
boxes. We just totally checked all the nerd boxes.
We did.
This is great.
Wait, but I need to tell you about my favorite superhero.
Yes.
My favorite. Everybody's like, God damn it, Brian. My favorite superhero is Batman. I'm a slut for Batman. I just wanted to
Wow,
say
we
it on
got
the
the three
airwaves.
classics right here. This is amazing.
Yeah, I
Kicking it
know,
off.
dude. The Trinity.
What a bunch of basic bitches we are. Look at us.
I know.
Oh,
And-
God,
man.
what?
And we're keeping
What?
it DC.
Yeah, I don't
How
even
about that?
I don't even know
I
what to
know.
do with that information. That hurts me. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. I am such a. Yeah, it's the orphan component. It's the human component standing with alongside gods. He's a problem solver. Bruce Wayne is a designer.
There
Okay,
you go.
Oh.
There
you know
go.
what the biggest scope creep problem is? Crime in Gotham City.
I officially hate you,
Okay.
Brian.
If there ever was a way to end this episode, I think Brian just did it. You got it all the way back around. That was amazing.
Yeah,
Oh.
beautiful. On that note,
Awesome. Cheryl, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh,
This is
thanks so
awesome.
much. This was
Cheryl,
fun.
yeah. Seriously, thank you for thank you for just walking us through your journey with the monster known as
Yeah, and there better be merch.
Yeah.
yes.
Oh, there will
Yeah.
be.
I'm
There's
gonna
be so much
text
merch.
Kevin and tell him he's not doing his job if we don't get merch.
He actually, he sent me, I think we're going with that one with the books on it. He had sent me a colored version that looks so good. It's pretty much
Oh, you have to
dialed,
share it.
so-
Awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So good. Oh,
Cool.
awesome. All right.
Well,
Well,
all right, y'all.
guys.
Well, I'm gonna hang up now. John, we can hop on a call. I'm gonna hang up now. You guys are great.
do you have to stop
All right,
recording?
see you
You
guys.
might have to do that.
Yeah. I love that. There's this like little banter of us figuring out how to use this at the end. This is great.
We're gonna
All
cut
right.
this out.
Stop.
I promise.
Gosh.